Good morning and welcome to the Saturday special of Dr.Lamba's Awakening Call. A few days back, I received a call from one of the TV stations, and the subject of discussion was the Indian government stand on the Ukrainian conflict. And then the stand of the government of India is open and clear. It advocated a cessation of hostilities without taking sides on the issue. And then one of the participants in that discussion said that this goes against the teaching of Gandhian principle of ahimsa, non-violence, and also the centrality of Bhagavad Gita, the all-embracing way of life and thought, which is often labeled with a shorthand tag of Hinduism. And I told that man that Mahabharata is a multi-hued tapestry. It's woven and rewoven the loom of millennia. And in Mahabharata, the multi-hued tapestry as it is, Gita is a unique thread of dazzling singularity, and that extends beyond the war zone of Kurukshetra, the land where Gita was uttered, is beyond the boundaries of time and space, is beyond the cause and effect of the karmic cycle of the birth and the rebirth. And then he is a question, then why this ambivalence? And then I thought that this is a subject which needs to be discussed. Indian government's approach to the Ukraine conflict, advocating a stoppage of hostilities without taking sides, is absolutely in conformity with the intrinsic idea of Mahabharata and Gita. Because, as I said, in a multi-hued tapestry, you can not and should not cherry pick. One principle is not applicable to everything. It takes different things. And then, India can claim a tradition of ahimsa while adhering to the teachings of Gita. Gita is the teaching which Arjuna got from Krishna when he was faltering, when he was hesitant, and he was asked by God to take up arms without remorse against his own kinsman. And now there is an ambivalence. Krishna, to avoid the war, had left Mathura and Vrindavan and gone to Dwarka, far out, a new city to be set up. He didn't want to fight, so he left. And that's why they call him Ranchod, the man who left the battlefield. And here he is asking Arjuna to take up arms on the killing fields of Kurukshetra. So isn't there ambivalence right there? Why travel a millennia from Kurukshetra to Ukraine and say there's ambivalence? Ambivalence is a part of the human life. And then they ask me, how can you preach non-violence when your sacred text enjoins you to kill without calm or conscious? And the next question really amazed me. How is Gita different from Mein Kampf, where Hitler wanted to kill people and that led to the Nazi Holocaust? And then I tried to explain that the Gita is a philosophical treatise. We use the metaphor of battle line. Kurukshetra can be taken up at two levels. One is that's a battlefield between Kauravas and Pandavas. But it's also a philosophical aspect where human life, human mind is a battlefield between the desires and the devices of the ego, to be free of the ensnarement of the self and attachment, and also achieve cosmic consciousness. This argument might seem ambivalent itself, but then, as I said, Hinduism is not a dogmatic religion. If you look at the Puranas and Shastras, it is a compendium, it's encyclopedic knowledge, a way of life which is to be adjusted according to the need. Even Mahatma Gandhi, the apostle of Ahimsa in this age, had said at one time that in case of need you might have to take up arms. The question arises, how does a 700 verse Gita fit into 200,000 verse Mahabharata, an epic poem, which is 10 times longer than Homer's Iliad and Odyssey combined, and which is, in its depiction of the manslaughter, is the most damning of all anti-war treatments. Here in Mahabharata you see a cousin drinking the blood, the wife of the cousin washing her hair with the blood of the other person. So all that at times does look to be human, but then if you take it at a metaphysical level, the ambivalence vanishes. The ambivalence is there as long as you are at the surface and skimming the top without going deeper. Can you imagine, as I said, a 200,000 verse epic poem, more than combined Iliad and Odyssey, would not take into aspect of the different aspects of the human life. And that different aspects of the human life are in fact the real depiction, because life is never black and white. There may not be 50 shades of grey, but there can be many one. It can be more than 50, what I mean. You can never localize and lock up the human mind and the situations in which a human might be facing. The Ukrainian war, the basic, if we look at the ambivalence, but it's not the first time. Jawaharlal Nehru always said that we stand for non-interference, and yet we took action in Goa because that was the need of the hour. And the teaching of Bhagavad Gita doesn't have ambivalence. It is in fact a clear call to act according to the need of the hour. It is not a Machiavellian attitude that employ all means. No. Fight according to the rules which have been laid down, but take up the arms without remorse when the need is there. Because when you do something with remorse, you are not being honest. In Mahabharata, there are no good guys, there are no bad guys. Let's be very clear. Everyone, including Lord Krishna himself, they are shown in the shades of duplicitous grey. Can you believe the holier than thou Yudhishthira has a weakness for gambling, which makes him beggar his own wife and his brothers? And he himself has been defeated in the throw of dice and therefore lost himself. And that was responsible for the catastrophic effect. So even Dharma Putra, Dharma representative, religious, incarnation of religiosity, is without doubt having grey areas. So in an attempt to reconcile the dissonance between the moral ambivalence of the main body of the narrative, on the one side, Mahabharata's main body of the narrative is moral ambivalence. But there is a disconsonance when you compare it with the sublimity of Gita. And some commentators have argued that Gita is a later interpolation, an add-on or a postscript as it were, which sacralized the Gita, Mahabharata, and turned what it was into a thundering good genre, full of twists, turns, treachery, and skullduggery into a religious text. So this was, according to some, but I don't accept it because, as I said, I take Mahabharata as a multi-hued tapestry. And this multi-hued tapestry has religiosity, has war, has good of the people. As a matter of fact, it highlighted and further hallowed. It was endorsed by the 19th century Indologists like Max Muller. And they made it the cornerstone of the philosophy of asceticism and sublimation of the self. So, Gita does have, and Mahabharata do have ambivalence, but that ambivalence, as I said earlier, is because of the human nature itself. Even nature itself is ambivalent. And then you would say, God on the one side is called to be kind, gracious, omnipresent, omnipotent, and yet there are so many crimes and the sins committed in the name of God. Yes, they are. But that is the beauty of life itself, where contradictory and numberless situations arise, where good and bad are juxtaposed to each other, and that's why there is nothing black and white. The orthodoxy might deplore what is seen, what I'm talking as hearsay, but contextualizing Gita as an interpolation helps them bypass the contradiction between the Vedantic teaching and main body of the epic. As a matter of fact, Gita, I would call it to be the epitome of Vedantic philosophy. Now, composed in bits and pieces, Mahabharata is unlike an extended television series, supposedly between the 3rd and the 4th century BC. This was written. And then at that time, though it was written, by and large it was an oral tradition. Things kept on creeping in, coming out. But the basic structure, the tapestry remained the same. And that has the fluidity of addition and omission. The fluidity of omission or addition has not taken away from the panoramic view of the tapestry. And Vyas, the original narrator of the epic, is also a participant, don't forget it. And it is said that he recited the entire story without pause to Ganesh, who acted as a stenographer. So written by Lord Ganesha, recited by Vyas, agreed. Interpolations are there. Interpolations are now even happening in the plays of Shakespeare and the novels, because some words are not liked. So woman, as I said, on the loom of millennia, this multi-hued tapestry is a unique thread. And if we look at the cause and effect of the human life, the karmic cycle of the birth and the rebirth, then the shades of grey play a very important role. It's presumed that howsoever high or low you may be, you cannot be 100% white. And that's why Krishna was cursed, and though a representative of God, he accepted the curse, and he died the way he died, was what had been the result of curse by Kunti, the mother of Duryodhana, showing thereby that the curse of an aggrieved mother can be worse than even the godliness inherent in you. Now, isn't that anomalous? That a person who is a God himself, the reincarnation of Vishnu, should be killed by a hunter, all alone, unwept, unsung, unhonored. The death of Krishna was not a event which is celebrated in Mahabharata, no way. So the whole thing shows that the ambivalence started right in the beginning and it continued till the end. And that is because that is what human life is. The ambivalence philosophical postscript to Mahabharata has to be taken in the context of the spiritual and spatial movement, taken away from the mundane things, but in a practical manner, perceive them as their relevance to a typical situation, and as the relevance changes, the interpretation would change. So ambivalence is the ambivalence of the human nature. Human nature is never static. Human beings would change according to time, situation, and so would the meaning thereof, the interpretation thereof. So take it as the real depiction of the human mind in its various shades of grey, but never becoming totally black or totally white. Thank you.